So, like a lot of my childhood, my memories from ages 6 to 10 are a bit hazy, almost like snapshots, but a few moments do stand out to me. So, at home, things were a little complicated. Mom had married this man, and I almost said his name, but I won't. He's passed on now, but regardless, out of respect for him and his family, he was 20 years her senior. He was a retired Army veteran, and he carried a lot of bitterness. He was a angry, belligerent drunk, and it just was a weird time. He carried a lot of that bitterness into our household, and the neighborhood we lived in wasn't the best. We went from living to this nice house in the county in Elmwood. Yeah, St. Louis. Yeah, we was in the county. It was in Elmwood. We had a nice little, I think it was a 3-bedroom house with a basement. It was very nice. And then we ended up moving to the city. He owned a 2-family flat on Cook. We stayed in the Ville. So we lived in a 2-family flat on Sarah and Cook in St. Louis. If you know, you know. Anywho, so him and my mom lived in the downstairs flat, and me, my sister, and my brother lived in the upstairs flat. So that was kind of cool, having our own little spot. But I don't know, it was overshadowed because the neighborhood was really, really bad, which meant that I couldn't leave the yard. I was bound to stand in the yard or playing directly in front of the house. So that made it hard to make friends because all the kids in the neighborhood had went to school together, so they had already had bonds. I was getting bussed out to the county. Because I was I don't know if y'all remember, but I was part of the DSEC program. Tap in if you know about the DSEC program. But anywho, that's basically a program where they bust out the kids from the city to the county and integrated the schools. So basically the black kids was getting sent to the county schools to go with the white kids. Now, I was already living in the county, so I was already enrolled in that school, but when we moved to the city, that kind of switched things up at a critical time because I was entering, I want to say kindergarten at that time. So critical years, where critical transition years, you know what I'm saying? Where you're trying to establish some, close bonds. But anywho, that was a little difficult for me to do during that time because, like I said, the neighborhood kids had already had bonds with one another, both in school and at home within the neighborhood. And I was running into that same issue inside of the classroom where I had friends at school, but they weren't close, tight bonds because those kids lived in the same neighborhood together and they also went to school together as well. So they were bonding pretty much all day. And so it was kind of cliquey, so I never really gelled into a particular group. So anyway, it became easy for me to settle into being the outsider. I was very much so becoming comfortable with it, which is strange because I always had a really big personality, but it's just I was never in the circumstances where I could shine in that way. So instead of forcing my light in rooms that didn't want to see it, I kind of just kept it to myself until I lost it, to be honest. Or I won't say lost it, I would say I felt like I lost it. It was always there because I always wanted more for myself. Even as a little girl, I always was the dreamer, the one to think outside the box, the one to want to do something a little more, a little odd, But it wasn't all bad though, don't get it twisted, because I had joys like it was this little girl down the street. My mom's ex-husband had a friend who lived down the street in a different flat, and they had a little girl, and her name was Laquita, and me and her would play. She would come to my yard because I couldn't go up and down the street because the neighborhood was dangerous. But when she would come up to play with me, we would be allowed to go in front of the house, and that's where we would play hopscotch or jump double dutch or play rope. Whatever we was gonna do, we had to do it either in my yard or in front of my house. I couldn't go down to her house or nobody else's house. So that was fun. And when I wasn't playing with her or stuff like that, I would be in the house more than likely reading a book or watching something on PBS or Nickelodeon, my favorite shows. So that was kind of my little after school / weekend time filler. Excluding when I went to Granny House. Now, when I went to Granny House, hey, babe, that was pure unadulterated freedom for me. That was just chef kiss magic right there. At my granny house, I could laugh and be with my cousins. I could roam a little bit up and down the block and, just be a kid. I remember, that I had made friends with all of my cousin buddies' friends, and my cousin has passed since I began writing this book, but I'll get into that later. But anywho, I had made friends with all of his friends, which were a bunch of boys, and it probably was about 2 or 3 girls in the neighborhood that I would hang out with. So I would hang out with his crew, and then if I wasn't hanging out with his crew over Granny House, my granny had a neighbor named Miss Lockie, and I would go to Miss Lockie's house next door and, just hang out with her. She would sit on the porch all day. I would sit there with her talking, and as a grown woman now, I'm like, you know what, how generous is that? Because was I getting on that lady nerves? Just coming over her house talking to her all day. But no, Miss Lockie treated me like her own grandbaby. She was dope. She would send me to she would give me money and have me go to the store for her, and she'd hand me a $20 bill or sometimes a $10 bill, something like that. And I'd go to the store, she'd have me get her probably a Vest soda, a honey bun, bag of chips, something simple, and let me keep the change. So I was like, what? And then I remember I used to always let her dance. I still let her dance, still let her listen to music. So she would turn the radio on the porch, and I'd be dancing, or she'd have me perform, and I'd be doing little stuff, whatever. She'd be like, you gonna be a solid gold dancer. You gonna be a solid gold dancer. And I would love it. And I would love it because, she acknowledged me. She acknowledged my big presence, and she didn't force me to tone it down. She hyped me up. You know what I'm saying? So she just was an extra piece. It was like going to one granny house and getting 2 grannies for the price of one. It was amazing. And my granny knew all the women in the neighborhood. So it was just a safe space overall, inside of her home and outside of her home. Another reason why I liked visiting Granny House so much is because I would be able to see my dad. My mom and my dad were never really in a relationship. I never witnessed them be together or anything like that, but they always had a good relationship, if that makes sense, I never seen them argue, fuss, fight. If they did, I never knew nothing about that or whatever. My dad was always present. But the meeting spot would always be at my granny house because for some reason my mom's ex-husband did not like my dad. And I don't understand why. My dad never said nothing mean ever to me about dude. But for some reason he just didn't care for my dad, and I'll get to that in a later chapter. But anywho, my dad would come over and he would visit. We would talk, laugh, and play. He, chit-chatted up with Granny. He would bring me clothes, money, and snacks. And that's a big freaking deal at that age. And he wouldn't just bring stuff for me. He knew that my cousin was there. My cousin Buddy was there. And he would make sure that he... I don't know if y'all hear the wildlife in the background. It's birds and butterflies and everything is going off. I feel like the universe is just supporting me fully in telling my story and getting this off my chest. So I just have to acknowledge that. Because as I'm sitting here talking about my cousin Buddy, who just recently passed away, a black and blue butterfly just flew past me. And it's significant to me because the week he passed, I seen so many of them. I even have photos on my phone. So I just had to acknowledge that. And I feel your presence, cuz. Thank you. Now moving on, my dad would bring so many snacks, toys, clothes, and gifts because the neighborhood kids would all be around too, and he didn't want to come over there and have something for me and not have something for the kids who I was hanging out with. And at the time, it never really bothered me or anything like that, but I was like, okay, Dad's nice. But now, as a grown woman, I realized, like, my dad, he is a gem. He is a rare dude because, like, his presence wasn't only being present there for his child, for me, and making sure he bonded and built stability in me. He spread that generosity and that fatherhood to kids in the neighborhood. And as a grown woman, I could just say how dope that is to me because so many of my cousins and so many of the neighborhood kids and even my own siblings didn't grow up with an active father. So when he came around, not saying that he was their father figure, but when he came around, he gave that persona, and he just made sure he looked out for not only his child, but everybody who his child was connected with. So I don't know, I value that about my dad. Anywho, wrapping up this part, just reflecting back on those times, it just taught me a few lessons of contrast. I learned restriction versus freedom. I learned loneliness versus connection. I learned absence versus presence, outside versus belonging. And, in all those moments, seeds of healing were being planted inside of me that I didn't even recognize, and I'm just so grateful for that. I really am. So if you can connect or relate or see yourself in any parts of this story, check out my Black Sheep meditation. I'll try to link it in the comments. If not, you can go check it out at Divinely Guided by Cosmic Harmony, Candles and More on YouTube. Until then, I'll leave you with some affirmations. Take a deep breath and repeat after me. Even when I felt like an outsider, I still mattered. My freedom and joy are sacred. I honor the safe places that shaped me. I carry both the wounds and the blessings of my childhood. Remember, your story is your power and your healing is your purpose. Thank you for listening. Thank you for letting me share my story with you. Until next time.